On a quiet night lit by candlelight, a child was born to a mortal woman. But his fate was not mortal. The blood of Zeus flowed in his veins. Zeus, king of the gods, watched from the clouds, not with fatherly love, but with eyes that foresaw a heavy fate. Hera's rage burned from the start. She sent 2 serpents to slay the child in his cradle, a child born of the sky. But the child was no ordinary infant. In silence, his hands gripped the serpents' necks and crushed them before they could strike. One day he lifted a stone no one else could move, and in that moment, they knew they were witnessing a legend. He grew among warriors, sword in hand and fearless eyes, his strength already greater than men twice his age. Amidst battles and training, he gave his heart to Megara. For the first time, Heracles was not a warrior, but a man in love. But Hera would not rest. With dark magic, she clouded Heracles' mind and planted fury deep in his soul. In his madness, he lost those he held dearest, and when he awoke, only silence and an empty home remained. He fell to his knees among the ruins, not to pray, but to regret. From that moment on, his life became an endless penance. He sought refuge in a quiet, shadowed temple, hoping for a path to redemption. But what he heard was not forgiveness. It was penance. In his first labor, he faced a beast no blade could pierce. The lion roared, loud and thunderous, and Heracles stepped back. In a dark swamp, a many-headed beast awaited him. Each head he cut gave rise to 2 more, like sins that never die. Sometimes battle requires no violence. He had to capture a sacred deer through silence, respect, and a speed matched only by nature. In snow-covered mountains, he faced a wild boar that shook the earth. But this time, his task was not to kill, but to capture. No blade nor hammer would help him. With the force of a river, he unleashed a flood, cleansing filth with the fury of nature. Birds of iron, beaks like spears. They darkened the skies with fear. But his arrows were precise, and his patience sharper than blades. The bull, wild and furious, raged through wind-blown fields. Heracles overcame it, not with rage, but with control. For a legendary belt, he entered the land of the Amazons, where honor meant more than victory. Wild, flesh-eating horses fed on blood and fear, and to tame them, he had to meet their rage with his own. In a distant land, 3-bodied Geryon guarded crimson cattle, but no gaze, no blade could block Heracles from his path. Within a golden garden, apples of immortality hung from sacred trees, guarded by a sleepless dragon with burning eyes. In his final trial, he descended into the land of the dead, and with chain and will, dragged the 3-headed beast back to the world of men. 12 labors, 12 shadows. Now, in silence atop a hill, stands a man who is no longer merely mortal. For a fleeting while, the war within him slept. Beside Deianira, he was simply a man, not a hero. But peace was never his to keep. A cunning centaur deceived Deianira, and with a single arrow Heracles saved her, never knowing death hid within that act. A gift of love turned to torment. His flesh burned, his bones screamed, and even a demigod collapsed to his knees. On the high cliffs, burned and broken, he breathed, neither alive nor dead, and the sky watched, silent, distant. No enemy could defeat him, so he gave himself to fire, not to perish, but to be freed. In flame his body turned to ash, but his spirit rose skyward. Zeus reclaimed his son, and Heracles became eternal. Zeus, the heavenly father, lifted his son's spirit from the flames no mortal could endure, not as rescue, but as a reward for the suffering he bore alone. The clouds parted, and the gates of Olympus opened with a blinding light. The gods stood in silence, and Heracles stepped gently into their midst. The light washed away his scars and wiped years of darkness from his eyes. No longer a weary man, but a god with a face that held peace, not war. Years, perhaps centuries, passed. All that remained was stone, carved by worn hands. Yet even that cold gaze still held power, still gave life to his legend. On a quiet night by a small fire, an old man told his tale. The children listened, not just to words, but to the magic rising from the embers, and in the silver mist, only a shadow remained. Perhaps a dream, perhaps more. But anyone who saw it believed. Heracles is still there. Legends never die. They simply rest in the hearts of those who listen. This is not the end. It is the beginning of every retelling of Heracles' name.